Good morning, grandkids. Well, today is Friday, and it's time for another chapter from our story that I'm writing. This is chapter 9. I had put my coat back on before we got home, but as soon as I got home and inside, Mom was checking us. Lately, she, of course, was always concerned if we were okay. So, of course, she saw the blood on my hand where it had smeared its way down my arm and out from under my coat sleeve. Dad sat me down and Mom went to work on me, cleaning the wound and bandaging my arm. Then she went to my room to bring back an old sweatshirt for me to put on. Champ was aware of the commotion and had come running out there while Mom was getting the sweatshirt. The bloody rags were in a pan of water on the table near where I was resting my arm. "Wow," he shouted. His eyes were big and bright, and I knew him well enough to know that he had almost said, "Cool." I laughed and said, "Cool, huh?" and gave a wink toward Dad. "Yeah," Champ said, and Dad rolled his eyes. Well, Dad and I were in the woods, and I think a hunter was in the woods somewhere, and when he fired a shot, it accidentally found its way to me. We never did see him, though. Champ ran back into his room and found his water gun and ran back into the kitchen, pointing it around and going, "Pow, pow." Dad and I looked at each other with a little grin, and Mom just threw up her hands. I felt like I wanted to rest a bit, and I went into my bedroom and dug around for an old spiral-bound notebook and half a pencil. Then I piled onto my bed, stuffing a couple of pillows behind me. I had decided I wanted to write down anything that we knew or had found out about what was going on, and any questions that we had. Number 1, I wrote, the first thing we know about was the unformed entity messing with us. I remember that at the very beginning. Number 2. Next, this entity kept getting stronger and forming a better shape. 3. By then, we knew that it was a female and was trying to coax us somewhere. Number 4. We knew that Mr. Connor didn't know where his daughter Audrey was. At least that's what he said. Number 5, we all knew that she wanted to get out of this place soon. Number 6, we know that old man Forrester, who lives over on the other side of the creek, never socializes with anyone, but he liked to flirt with Audrey when he saw her. Number 7, we know that we had been shot at in the woods twice, one shot hitting me. But who was it? Number 7, we know that, number 8, Dad had went to see Mr. Connor, who had moved down the hill to Licksville. Dad is suspicious of Connor and of old man Forrester. Number 9, this apparition in the woods has become ghostly clear enough that we know now that it's Audrey. Number 10, so we know this is Audrey. We know she's dead, not run off, and the shots have been fired and I've been hit, and 2 men are suspicious. Okay, so we know all this, which looks like a lot, but really doesn't give us any answers. I was feeling a little frustrated when Mom poked her head inside the door. "Hey, I got supper ready. I can bring you a tray if you want." "No, Mom, I can come to the table." I got up, keeping my piece of paper in my hand, and went out and sat down at the table. I handed the paper over to Dad and said, "I was writing down everything that I can think of that we either know or wonder about. If you think of anything more, add to the list." I then looked up at Mom, saying thanks with a big smile as she plopped a big helping of sauerkraut with cut-up sausages in it, some carrots and mashed potatoes onto my plate. My favorite meal. I looked across the table at Champ, who was eating happily but watching me. I picked up my fork and mixed up all my food together, which I always do. Mom and Dad gave a disgusted look, while Champ and I slapped hands across the table. I love having a lot of everything in one bite, every bite. Dad laid the paper down on the table and said, "Son, that looks pretty thorough to me. I can't think of anything else. I think that tomorrow, though, I'm going to go into town and get a couple of men to take with us to go back up there. I want to check around that burned down cabin. If whoever shot at us lets us, that is. I think with more men, he'll likely leave us alone. I think I'll even go down to Licksville and ask Mr. Connor to come with us. See how he reacts to that." "Hey," I said, "that sounds like a good idea to ask Mr. Connor. Can I ride into town with you? I'd like to see Susan. I haven't seen her in a few days. Don't want her getting a new boyfriend." I grinned. Champ rolled his eyes, but Dad said it would be okay. "I'll pick you up when I come back into town at the cafe." I nodded my head as I shoved some more food into my mouth. "What are you going to tell her about your arm?" Dad asked. "I could tell her I got bit by a wolf while we was up in the woods." He didn't say anything, but Mom gave me a frown. "Well, I could tell her I scratched a sore too much and it got infected, and you put some ointment on it and wrapped it up to keep it clean. How's that?" "Well," Mom said, "doesn't sound as outlandish and as tangling with a wolf does." I looked over at Dad, and he was eating with a slight smile on his face, so I figured I was safe with that answer and went on eating. No one said anything about lying, so I figured a small white lie was better than a big black one. It bothered me inside somehow, though. Everyone seemed to feel that way about lying and other things too. Someday I might have to find out why the right and wrong of that bothered me and what was true. Champ was whispering at me about my arm. "What does it feel like to get shot?" I looked at him and said, "It hurts." "I mean, how does it hurt? What's it like?" he said, with them big eyes. I smiled at him and said, "Well, maybe like when Rascal snaps his teeth on your hand when you're playing too rough with him, or when Dad gives you a hard swat on your bottom." "Oh," he mumbled, and as he stuck another bite of food in his mouth. After supper, I was laying on the bed again, my hands behind my head, thinking as usual. If Audrey was dead because someone killed her. Who would do that, and why? Whoever did it, for whatever reason, could have just let her go on and leave town after graduation, which wasn't that far off. As soon as winter passed, what had been so urgent? If it was Mr. Connor, her dad, what could have been so bad that he couldn't just let her go ahead and leave? And old Mr. Forrester across the creek, could he have carried on with her too much and it got out of hand? I got up and went back out to the living room. Mom was still cleaning up in the kitchen. Champ was in his room playing. Dad was sitting in his recliner looking through the newspaper. I went over and sat down in Mom's chair. Hey, Dad, I imagine one of the men that you're going to ask to come with us is your friend Mr. Dell. I was wondering if I could ask his son, Jeff, who's my friend, to come with us. Dad was looking at me, thinking. Finally he said, sure, he's even a year older than you are. And also, I would imagine it would be harder on his dad trying to keep him from knowing anything about what's going on than it's been for you and me keeping anything from Champ. Sure, go ahead and ask him, but warn him about those rifle shots. Oh, and I told your mom, and you should know, I'll be carrying a gun. Whoever I ask to come up there with us will be carrying a gun or a rifle. I feel like I should be prepared next time someone takes a shot at us. I told him I thought that was a good idea, and I thanked him for giving me the okay to ask Jeff, and I went off toward bed. I looked back and asked, Dad, are we going tomorrow sometime or tomorrow night? As soon as I get back from Licksville, he said. I turned and went on into my room to bed. So that's it for this Friday. Next Friday, we shall probably see a group of men and a couple of boys going up the woods again to that burned down shack that's up there and see if there's anything around there that can help them to understand what's going on. So I will see you all then. I hope you're enjoying this. It's fun for me writing it, but it's harder for me to write it than it was writing Dorkly. And I don't know, writing a mystery is just harder for me. It's not as much fantasy as writing Dorkly was. But as soon as I finish this one, I'll be writing another episode of Dorkly because he will be spending a lot more time across the water in the other country, and we'll see what's going on over there. And I will see you again next Friday. Bye-bye, grandkids.